Hello and welcome to the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson. The Local Leaders Podcast provides a platform for successful business owners to share their stories, their experiences, their advice, and their ideas in order to help our listeners achieve more success in their business and in their lives. Get ready, another great show is coming up. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's another Monday. I think it's, what are we, January 10th? And this is Jeff Johnson here with the Local Leaders Podcast. And we appreciate all our listeners joining us today. And for your listening pleasure, we've got David Meinert here with us today. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks.
Hey, I called it show, I guess podcast, show, talk, whatever you want to call it. But David is, has three different concepts, or restaurant concepts that we want to hear a little bit more about today. The 5 Point Cafe, Mecca Cafe, and Huckleberry Square. So if it's okay with you, David, I'm just going to hand you the reins for a minute and maybe let you give us, our listeners, a quick sense of what each of these concepts is all about.
Sure. Yeah. So three different places all around the Seattle area, two downtown Seattle and one in a suburb called Burien. The Mecca Cafe and 5 Point Cafe are closely related. They've both been around for a long time. The 5 Point started in 1929 and the Mecca then a year later by the same family in 1930. And they're old school diner concepts with a bar. And so obviously in 1929, they didn't have bars, but there's rumors that they did, were speakeasies too. But eventually in 1933, when beer became legal, they opened up the bar side. And then were kind of popular family, kind of working class eateries in Seattle. Basic kind of homemade diner food. We try to make everything by hand. In-house, small kitchens, but we do well, and then a lot of we're probably 40% alcohol sales in those concepts too. So that makes them a little bit different. The 5 Point traditionally before COVID was open 24 hours, and the Mecca's open 6 a.m. till 2 a.m. And then in Burien we have Huckleberry Square, which is a total family kind of diner concept, opened in 1979, was owned by the same family until 2020 when I bought it. And that's American comfort food, breakfast, lunch, dinner, not really much alcohol sales there. We have some beer on tap and some cocktails, but mostly food, probably 95% food sales. And a lot of real breakfast and lunch heavy at that one. But again, trying to make things in-house, make them good, but pretty basic, traditional American diner kind of food.
Well, that nothing beats traditional diner food to me anyway, because I try to get it several times a week. I'm in a small town in North Carolina, and we've got a couple of diners around here that I frequent, and there's nothing better to me than good old-fashioned comfort food.
Yeah, that's good.
And then, now, did you come up in like the diner business, or how did you get into this thing, David?
So I came up. I was actually going to be an attorney, and then decided I didn't want to hang out with attorneys all day. That was probably a good choice for me. And I got into the music business. I was in the nightclub business for a long time. Ended up managing bands, worked with bands around the world, including Morocco, and eventually found this little band called the Lumineers that blew up pretty big.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, also when I was in the nightclub business, we started a music festival, and we decided, a partner of mine and I decided, after having been kind of in the front of the business, that the people really making the money were selling the beer and taking very little risk. And so we got into that and ran some concessionaire type businesses at music festivals and nightclubs. But during all that, I also got into I got the opportunity to own the Five Point, which really got me into the restaurant side. And that was a, old school diner that I hung out with, dive bar, really great, kind of notorious, famous in Seattle. And it came up for sale, and I was able to buy it, and then eventually get the other side, which is the Mecca Cafe. And then I moved down to Burien 10 years ago now, and then my neighborhood place became available, and I got to be friends with the owner, and ended up buying it. He wanted to retire, so it's kind of they all fell to me eventually. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing. I've also opened a small chain of pizza restaurants, New York style, and done some, a bunch of other things like a lot of people, kind of independent business person.
Yeah, well, you're very diversified, and I'm going to hazard a guess and say that all these diners slash bars, maybe the lesson here is if you hang out in them enough and have enough beer and cocktails, you may end up getting to buy one.
That's right. Yeah. You get to know the owner, and then when they're done, which will be eventually, someone's got to buy it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it's interesting on that level. A lot of Seattle was never a great food town. Now it really is. But there was a lot of these old school, traditional comfort food restaurants here. And a lot of people bought them and then tried to change them, make them into foodie places. And they mostly failed, almost all of them. But these two that are in Seattle, the Mecca and the Five Point, that continue to thrive in just what they were, kind of working class American comfort food, and still really popular. So it's a secret I don't like to share because it actually works really great. So hopefully no one ever wants to do it.
And to all our listeners on Local Leaders Podcast, we got some juicy goods right there. Normally David wouldn't share that with us. So thank you for that. But yeah, I mean, I love it. And you're right. You do see diners or any kind of concepts you see people take, but these old traditional diner type style restaurants, they've been successful for 100 years, and why change that? It's go in, keep the food good, make it better in any way you can from a quality or service delivery kind of capability, and just let people to continue to enjoy it and enjoy the support of the community. So that's a great story, and kind of how you found your way into the business. And let me ask you this. I didn't prep you for it or anything, but kind of off the top of your head, as I've had more people ask me about, how to go about acquiring the business. So in just like a short little summary, what would you advise people on who are looking to purchase a restaurant? What do they need to look for?
Well, I would first try to find a broker to deal with. I've in two of these transactions, I went through the broker. The first one, the Five Point, was a longer story, but I ended up knowing the owner of the building, and the people running it at the time had just failed miserably. So we wanted to bring someone in to do it. But the other two, I used a broker, and they really help you anyhow do the business analysis, the kind of, coming up with a rental agreement and knowing all those things. So I would start with finding a restaurant broker. And then looking, location, and concept, and making sure you're passionate about it and about the both the culture of it and the food. You want to be passionate about all those aspects. The Five Point's interesting because when the original owner died, some other people took it over, and they ended up hating the vibe of the place because it's a dive bar, and they didn't like that. And so that just, they ended up getting divorced. It went to the ground. They owed back taxes. It was a real mess. And so I see a lot of people do that. They may take a business that's really successful, but it's successful because of the passion of the former owner. And if you don't have that same passion, that same interest, it's hard to take over a business if you're going to buy one. I'd also be cautious of people selling. A lot of times people are selling a business because it doesn't work, rather than that it does. So you have to be real careful and really dig into why they want to sell, why it's not working, what you're getting into with the lease and the building. I've always loved places, restaurants, bars, and old buildings, but they come with massive challenges of their own. Just going in and fixing old plumbing and old electrical and roofs and all the things that go wrong with buildings. So great vibes, but tough challenge.
Yeah, that's great advice, because you're right. Those types of bars, restaurants, I'm thinking old warehouse districts, in downtowns that are being renovated across the country. Those are some beautiful places, but the time and investment and cost, associated with getting them open can be tough.
Yeah, well, and a lot of times these old owners, the reason they want to sell is because they've let it go long enough to bring it back up to a functional level would cost more than it's worth. Um, so you have to be ready for that
Yeah.
and factor that into the price. You take out a wall and all of a sudden it's filled with black mold, and now you're $100,000 more in the project. So
Yeah. So you gotta build that in.
and I've done that, so I know that from experience.
Yeah, you know exactly what
It's
happened.
a bummer.
Well, that's great advice. Thank you for sharing that. I know I went a little off script, but I was just curious, because I've had a few people ask me lately, to talk more about that area, and having purchased 3 now, you're the expert. You're the
Right,
resident.
right. I guess, yeah. And I've done more than that, but I've sold a few too. And I really advise, getting I've got a couple brokers I work with. They're good friends, and we talk all the time. We talk about what's available. And in my mind, I look at stuff all the time, and maybe 10% of what I look at actually comes to fruition. So it's not, just don't jump, and be willing to walk away. I walked away from a big project recently, right before COVID, that if I would have done it, I would have been bankrupt. But I just had a gut feeling not to do it, even though I'd put a bunch of money and time into it, and I walked away, and thank goodness, because it would have ruined me. So sometimes be willing to jump ship.
And trust your gut, in other words, in that case, because if it's telling you to get out, maybe you need to get out. But it is so hard, David, when you've got time and money invested in it. It's like, man,
it's hard. Like, I always try my best to talk, just my internal dialogue, to talk myself out of doing something, and then if I can win an honest argument with myself, I might still do it. But like in this case, in 2019, I just thought, man, everything's going so great, but 2020, it just may not. All the things I think will pan out might not. And not only did they not pan out, we had a pandemic. So
yeah.
it was a lucky jump, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, good for you. I'm glad you missed out on that one, and
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be plenty more opportunities coming down the pipeline, and establishing a good relationships with some good restaurant brokers is a great idea for anyone looking to to get in, especially if you haven't done it a lot and you need some guidance, some help, some assistance, and some good advice. So
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that as well. So you mentioned COVID, helping you avoid that project. As far as your 3 concepts today, I'm sure you're experiencing the same problems as everyone else, challenge-wise, with cost of food, shortages, and staffing. But let me just ask you about staffing. Are you having to do anything special or anything different or unique to try to recruit and retain people?
No, but we started, I think, doing that unique thing a long time ago. So prior to getting into this business, I worked in businesses where, health insurance and 401ks and those kind of things, where everybody had them. And as an independent business owner, when I got into restaurants, really there was a guy at the 5 Point named Willie, and he was a cook. He'd worked there for 20 years, 65 years old. And I met him, and he had nothing. He had no retirement plan, no health insurance, and he kicked butt, frankly. And I was really surprised, like, how does this guy that's worked at this place for 20 years, he's going to retire and have nothing? and the guy that owns it's going to sell it and make a couple $1,000,000. So I, at that point, this is back in 2009, put into, effect a retirement plan and a health insurance plan. And I did all the calculations and tried it out for 6 months, and it um, cost about 3%. I had to raise prices about 2 to 3% to cover it all, but our sales went up 7%, and our costs of recruitment and training went down significantly. So, fast forward to now, I've not had a problem during this whole time keeping and retaining employees. They get benefits that they don't get elsewhere, and it's been way worth it. And then, at the beginning of the pandemic too, we got the PPP money, and for me, we had to close in Washington, and but I kept paying everybody. I kept paying their benefits and kept them on payroll. And when we reopened, I was fully staffed and didn't have to struggle with that. And I watched other people take that PPP money and try to use it as a 1% interest loan, which isn't a bad idea financially, but they weren't able to keep their employees, and then come back and they can't get staff and they can't reopen. So
Yeah.
I think we're a employee heavy industry, and that's one of the best things you can invest in is your staff.
Well, I think that's great advice, and you were on the ball way before it was cool, or at least required, because nowadays, to be competitive, you don't have to necessarily be doing health and retirement plans and all that, but it certainly gives you a leg up in terms of recruitment. And I'm shocked that the numbers panned out like that. I mean, and I wrote that down. Cost you about 3%, and sales were up 7%. Recruitment and training went down. Cost for
Yeah.
those. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer in that term.
There's also an important thing when it comes to retirement plans, and I think most people don't know this till they look into it. But as a self-employed person, if you have a 401k plan, you can put more of your own money into the 401k plan, and so you get a bunch of tax savings. So you really, it's a plus for everybody. Everybody ends up paying less taxes. Everybody ends up with better savings, and that's good for everyone, including yourself and your own family. So I really encourage everyone to look at that. In this industry, if we want our staff to be serious about their jobs and treat it as a career, they have to have retirement. People can't have a career without retirement benefits, or they're pretty screwed at the end of life. So I think it's something we really should, as an industry, be encouraging.
Very, very good point. And taking care of your people is critical today, to be able to get them and keep them. So great advice. And with that, I'm going to segue a little bit over to some of the things we talked about previously, and we love to talk about on the podcast, and that is your use of technology and some of the things maybe you're doing today to remain competitive and to drive sales and improve efficiencies and things like that. We talked about a lot of different apps and solutions, but you want to kind of give us a little sense of what you guys are doing from a POS to third-party delivery to online ordering, all those types of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd start to say if someone's new to this, or even, I mean, I'm learning stuff every day, and I've been doing this for a while. So, the real money in this business is at the margins, and I'm constantly tinkering with that. So every year I look at, our credit card processing fees, or we're constantly renegotiating our food costs, looking at how to do that. But the technology can really help now. So we do a lot of delivery. I'd rather not do delivery, to be honest, but during COVID, it's just become part of the industry. So you got to figure out how to do it and do it well. I would say on that, I'd love to just talk about the apps and how to do it, but you can negotiate down the fee, and that's something that people need to know. Is that we started off, we went with 4 platforms, and now I'm going down to 1, but in doing that, I had them half the fee and up the amount of free advertising and marketing we got. So at the end of the day, it simplifies the process, but also, saves us a bunch of money, and then we make a better profit margin on it. And then it's how you integrate those apps into your POS. So there's different POSs that do a better job at this. We use Aloha in 2 of the places. I've been with Aloha for about 10 years. It's a really robust platform. I like them a lot, but with some of these new things, they don't integrate directly into Aloha. So we have to use then a third-party omnivore to integrate them, and that becomes hard. I'm not a tech guy. I understand it, but that's not my forte. So fortunately, my girlfriend is way better at it than me, so she's been helping us. It's a little frustrating. There's other platforms like Clover and Toast that seem to do that part of it better. I haven't used Toast, but my bookkeeper has a bunch of clients that use it, and he is raving about them. On the backside of those, though, you have to worry about the credit card processing fees.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are owned, you know more than me about this, but they're owned by credit card processing. So they'll give you the software, the hardware cheap, but you're losing it on the back end on the fees. Might be good as a startup, you don't need $20,000 to buy everything, but over 4 years, it costs you $50,000.
Yeah.
So you got to be real careful about that, especially if you're doing volume. A lot of I think the tablet type platforms are made for slower businesses, that do under $1 million. Is my impression, and they're trying to expand into the micro Steinerware, Aloha world, and they're not quite there yet. But they're also trying to capture those fees. So those are all things we have to consider. So
yeah, great point, and very educational. A lot of folks or people don't think that all the way through. When you're looking at your options, and just for transparency, I'm in the POS space, and it's it can be frustrating, and when you're up against different things and competing with different solutions, when owners aren't considering all the different ramifications. Like you said, some systems are more integrated and ready to go with online sales capabilities and apps and things like that. And some give you a little more control over negotiating those back end fees. Other options don't give you that flexibility on the back end. And as you said, with volume, card processing fees can be significant. A big hit to your budget. So a lot to think about. It's really difficult sometimes to make the right call and decide which way to go. But you just kind of have to find the right solution that fits what you're trying to accomplish, in the near term, and think, 3 to 5 years, because you don't want that investment in the POS system to be gone next year.
Yeah. That's a big part of it too. 5 years goes fast. It's wild. Like you invest in something like that, and if you have to replace it in 5 years, that's a huge cost that you're not going to be ready for, because it just goes fast. And it's also people, I think that what I dislike about the tablet platforms that I've used is that I don't know the people. Like with Aloha and some of the other ones, there's salespeople that I've interacted with for years, the same people. And when there are issues, we've been able to solve them with someone I know and trust, as opposed to, some kid in Texas that, is going to work there for 6 months and then be gone.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with Texas, by the way. Just as an example, I was going to say North Carolina. But
Hey,
we like that. So
Yeah, you're exactly right. You never can tell, and in that POS space, there's I don't know. When people ask me, I'll say, there's 1,500 different systems out there that you can look at. Everybody's got a POS system, and but for restaurant space, you mentioned most of the big players, in the restaurant space already. So I won't reiterate that. It's just it's a big decision, and you got to think strategically and long term about it. But I don't want to get hung up on that part. But thank you for sharing your thoughts and pieces of what you've experienced, having owned multiple restaurants and dealt with them for years. I was looking for the name of that app you were telling me about. Seven shifts.
Seven shifts, yeah. So that's it. Back in the summer, we lost our GM for two of the restaurants that I'd worked with for years. She had done all the scheduling. I've never actually done scheduling before that. So suddenly I took over scheduling for two restaurants during COVID and then during snowstorms and all sorts of other things. And what a pain in the butt that is. Man, it's just it's so labor intensive. And the way she did it was very old school. We're using an Excel spreadsheet and printing them and posting them up. It works great. It's hard to change stuff, and it's hard to communicate with everybody on staff. So what we've been doing is, Excel spreadsheet, print and post, and use Facebook group, for communicating. Problem is not everybody uses Facebook. A lot of people, especially back house, don't have emails, but everybody has a phone. So what we're implementing is 7 shifts, and there's some other companies that do the same. I think When We Work, and there's a couple, but 7 shifts seem to be the one that seemed best to me, and it also has Spanish language support. So for our back of house, that's going to be important. It allows you to live time change schedules and everybody be notified, for staff to communicate with each other. You can have all sorts of limitations on who can trade shifts or asked to trade shifts. It seems pretty rich and a lot easier. And then you always have your schedule on your phone. You can always, I work remotely a lot because I have 3 places, so I can't be at all of them. But I find that the more remote work I can do, the better. And so that scheduling, this app, I'm pretty excited about. But we'll see how it actually works in reality. But I think it will save a lot of time, and also get people have less mistakes and get people to know their schedule a little bit more and not have to hit me up to check it or anything like that. So
yeah, like you're not busy enough to have to answer
right
scheduling questions all the time.
Yeah.
And hey, I checked it out after you mentioned it the last time we talked, and from what I remember, it's been a week or so back, but it's pretty cost effective, pretty affordable.
Yeah, I think it's we're going to go with the one with all the features,
Okay.
and that's $150 a month, which the time I spend on scheduling, and eventually my GM will do it, but even the amount of time that she would spend on scheduling, $150 is, easy. So I think that will help us a ton. And then, I think the other part of that I think technology will solve for us is payroll. And there's some apps that help with payroll too. Our biggest pain point in payroll is doing the tip pooling aspect of it and calculating that. And that ends up taking, several hours every payroll period. And then there's mistakes and people hitting us back, wondering why their paycheck is what it is, even though they can go online and check it. It's a mess. What I found, so there's some apps that do that, but with Aloha, I can actually pay a programmer, not very much, and they'll write us a program to fit the way we do it ourselves, which is unique. And I mean, there's so many different ways to do tip pooling. and tip sharing. We don't do tip sharing, but we do this. We tip out the back of the house, and we like to automate that. And we put all the tips on paychecks. So that's going to be, I think, help us a lot to time saver and stress saver with that technology. So in this new year, we'll try those technologies, and should be cool. I hope.
We got our fingers crossed for you, because that kind of leads me into as I look down at the clock. I want to make sure I'm cognizant of your time, but I'm curious about kind of what's next for you guys. I mean, you got your hands full, it looks like to me, but outside of these improvements and technology changes and the day-to-day operations, do you have any new projects in mind that you can tell us about yet? Or
No, for us right now, I think it's getting back to where we were. Reopening after being closed was almost like starting a new business in a way. And so we're back, we're open, but now Omicron hits, and we're, sales are back down. Definitely has affected sales this month. And so we're waiting for the spring, and hopefully we get back to normal. And then there's always new marketing things. The newest thing we'll probably get into soon is TikTok, and doing some restaurant marketing on TikTok, which will be interesting. And I think that there's already a lot of it happening. I haven't done it yet, but I think that's probably a new platform that we'll start using. And then it's just it's trying new food things. So I go through our menu pretty often, probably twice a year, and look at what's not selling and take it off the menu, and then try to add some new things. And I'm really interested in kind of Southern diner food. I'd love to have some fried green tomatoes and fried pickles, and a fried green tomato sandwich with bacon, of course.
That sounds good.
And some stuff like that. So we're always trying new food within the confines of what we do already. So I guess I'm excited about that. Doing more fried chicken. I love that that's becoming a thing, because we do that. Family style dinners we're trying to do. There's a thing in the Midwest that I love. We were in Wisconsin, in Green Bay, watching the Packers beat the Seahawks a couple times, which was sad. But they do every Sunday night. A lot of these small rural restaurants do a family chicken dinner, and it really cool. And so I kind of want to do that. I think we'll do it with turkey, because we already do that on Sunday nights. But just to do a family, dinner style thing on Sunday nights is kind of cool and fun. So we're always trying new things to be relevant and to stay, keep people coming in. So.
Well, that's awesome that you're innovating and creating and coming up with new twists, new ideas, new menu items, etc. I mean, being a diner is one thing, but you can't continue to serve the same thing day after day after day. So it sounds awesome. It sounds like you're going Southern to me with the fried pickles, the fried green tomatoes. I'm in, brother.
I love that stuff. I mean, that's man, I love it.
Yeah. Hey, next thing you're gonna have to do is make some biscuits and sausage gravy.
Oh, we do that. We're all
look,
man. We do. I actually, at all three of my places, one of our best selling things is the chicken fried steak, or biscuits and gravy, and chicken and biscuits and gravy. We do a lot of that. That's killer, and the homemade biscuits. That's fun, and so anything like that we can do, we love it. It's fun with diners. It's great because we can borrow different. Every region of the U.S. has diners, right, or some version of that. And then there's cuisine that's unique to that. So like we incorporated doing deep fried cheese curds, and then doing like a curd burger and trying to use them in different ways. Super fun. I love all that stuff. It's not high concept foodie stuff, but it's fun to do, We do a lot of poutine. I don't know. You ever have poutine in the South down there?
I have I'm not even familiar with what that is.
It's a big Canadian thing. It's basically French fries with melted cheese curds and brown gravy on
Ah,
them. And it's delicious.
Sounds reasonable to me.
It's great, man. People, and all the Canadians come down here and they love that. So we're always trying to, do our own versions of some regional type stuff, but it's super fun. So you got to, tell the diners they got to put poutine on the menu and it'll become a thing. It's like disco fries in New Jersey, So
yeah, I'm gonna have to share that with all my locals over here. In fact, I'm gonna ask them later today. Poutine. I'm putting it on my notes.
Yeah. Good.
Hey, well, that's been, it's been awesome, David, talking with you and getting to know you and your background and hearing, all the great information you have to share from your experiences. And I know there's a ton more in there, but again, I want to be respectful of your time. Kind of just to wrap this thing up, any words of wisdom, general advice for our owners out there who are, trying to be a little more successful in 2022?
Man, make sure you sleep 8 hours, take your vitamins, and treat your staff well. It's a big part of it.
Well, you know what, and David, it's all our listeners have heard. You guys are doing a great thing out there with taking care of employees and taking care of your people, so they can take care of your customers, which is what it's all about in the hospitality business.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you for coming on and taking time to share your knowledge and experience and background and ideas with our audience. So thank you very much for being a part of our podcast.
Well, thank you for doing this. It's super interesting, and I look forward to watching other people do this and talking to you about other parts of the business too. We got lots to talk about. So
yes, sir. Yes, sir. We look forward to it as well. And for all our listeners out there, thank you for joining myself and David today. Please join us for other podcasts. We're going on 100 of these things now, so we've got a lot of content out there. Our next task is going to be to try to organize it in a way where it can be topically searched. I don't know when we'll get there, but at some point we're gonna try to go there and be a little more have a little more Google capability. But again, thank you for listening. We look forward to having you back on our next episode of Local Leaders Podcast.